Hey, hey, hey. We're live.
Hey, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited.
Me too. I'm excited to talk about just some leadership lessons and aha moments that I've recently been hearing from clients and partners and even people on a conference showroom floor. So I'm wondering if we just should jump right in.
Good. I had to mute because I was making sure we were live and there was like an echo and a delay. So we are live on LinkedIn. We're live on other platforms. So let's get started.
Sounds good. One thing I wanted to share, it's a little bit of something that we don't often think about. I work with leaders across sectors, nonprofit, government, corporate, even small business. But I want to talk about this idea about leadership pathway. So when I say leadership pathway, I'm going to actually pull up my screen and draw a picture. I'm no artist, but I think a visual may help. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and we'll see what we get here. So when we think about those of you who may have gotten a promotion, you became a leader, and this is what you may often have seen, right? You get promoted, so there's that yay moment, right? You get promoted. And you got promoted because you had some thought leadership. You were good at your craft. I think about myself. So I remember when I got a promotion to become a senior director of community planning and engagement. It was because I had a master's in public policy and engagement. I had been doing that work for easily 8 years. I was doing public speaking. I was doing great writing and research. And my boss said, I think that you would be so great in this position. But had I ever managed 35 people before? No. Had I ever managed a $4 million budget before? No. Had I ever been working with mayors and directors of county departments? No. And so there was so much pressure on me to do this work. And so I started to feel this, I'm going to put a sad face here. I started to feel this pressure of, I'm not qualified to do this job. And I'm wondering, if anybody watching here has ever felt that. It's this imposter syndrome that starts to creep in. Here's what I know as a coach and a trainer who's worked with thousands of leaders, both those who are in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and also folks who are leaders in all other departments, whether they be engineers, program directors in organizations, and every other field you can think of. When we get promoted to leadership because of our content expertise, we're also asked to do all kinds of skills that we may not have been trained for. Things like, now we have a team. So we got to start thinking about, we've got to facilitate meetings. So guess what? All of a sudden, you've got to be a facilitator. And I'll tell you right now, I've actually trained in facilitation. There's a lot that goes into facilitation, like what's the agenda? How do you manage time? If there's disagreement, how do you calm down that disagreement and move people to agreement and close a meeting on time? As a leader, you also have to think about team culture. And team culture is a big one. When I say team culture, you got to be thinking about, well, we've got different identities on our team. So now, even if you're not a DEI leader, you got to be thinking about, I've got different languages, cultural backgrounds, racial backgrounds. I've got neurodiverse team members who may have to meet and participate differently. And how am I designing interactions and meetings to meet all the different needs of my teams? You've got to be thinking about, how am I coaching my team members? When I say coaching, I mean that so much of our ways that we maybe experienced supervision in the olden days may have been punitive. And we may say, I don't want to lead like that. I might want to lead more in a supportive way. But how many of you as a leader ever went to coaching school? I did. I have a coaching certification, but many of us didn't go to coaching school, and yet we're being kind of charged to lead like a coach. And so I made this other list here of the kinds of skills that we as leaders are being asked to do. We're being asked to be emotional intelligence experts, empathy, self-management, self-regulation, motivating others, managing the emotions of others. We're being charged to develop accountability systems with our team, develop team norms, and like 15 other kinds of skills. It's a lot. And the thing of it is, when we start to feel the weight of all of these skills, I can tell you it can feel overwhelming. And we might feel like our head is going to explode. And I'll tell you that a lot of my clients, they may say, well, our company can send us to training. But here's the difference. If you go to a training and get the skill, that's great for the 4 hours or 2 hours. But the question becomes, then what happens after? It's a big question. And I've created some solutions for that, but I'll end it here. I've been talking quite a bit, but I want to just kind of wrap up here by saying, if you're in a leadership position, and if you have felt that you know in your spirit that you are talented and knowledgeable, but it feels like a lot, you are not alone. It is a lot, but there are strategies that you can employ to lead in a way that is inclusive. It lifts up your people. It creates positive team dynamics and contributes to the inclusive culture that your organization is trying to create.
And I think that's one of the things that you mentioned, Chrysta. And I think this is happening in many organizations where we have these intergenerational dynamics where the baby boomers, who are many are in leadership roles and have decades of expertise, are aging out and they're retiring.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this is happening in a lot of organizations, many organizations and industries as a whole.
Yeah.
That the workforce is going to be very different value systems, different perspectives and views and lived experiences. But organizations are tapping into people, just like you said, that have a skill, that they're very good at their job, but they have to support them from a leadership and development standpoint because of the expectation, not only of the organization from a culture standpoint, but even from being able to manage people and being able to manage a team. And when you said you were put in a role, I was working throughout high school. And then my first real job, I was working as a senior in high school. And I remember when I graduated high school, I was given an option to be a supervisor. I was 18.
Wow.
I should have been a supervisor. But what I did was I learned every single person's job because I needed to pick up the hours. I needed the money. My mom was sick and on disability. So I was like, okay, you don't want to work Friday night? Great. How do you do your job? So I just, out of a sense of like desperation and what was going on in my personal life, my mom was like, if you are not going to college, you have to learn as much as possible so they don't fire you. Because in her mind, she's like, you don't know anything. You're young, but I was in technology. So the fact that they made me a supervisor, I was just looking at the money. I was like, yes, I go from $16 an hour to 18. I had no leadership skills.
Yeah.
I was younger than people that worked for me's children.
Yeah.
And I was a supervisor. That is terrifying to me.
Yeah.
But the fact is that these organizations that have all of this talent that are aging out, that are in leadership positions, are going to do the same exact thing. They're going to say, who's good at the job? Give it to them.
Yeah.
And if we don't support them, not only with the training, then that's great if I go to a training on how to deal with conflict and it makes sense in the moment. But what happens a month later when I'm in the middle of the conflict?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, the exact thing actually happened to me in my program. So I run a program called the DEI Dinner Party, and we have 2 tracks on leadership and the one for those who are leading in the DEI space. And we had a member this past fall who came into our conflict space. So it was both about how do you notice when you get triggered and activated in a conflict, and then how do you lower the temperature to help navigate others through a conflict. And this person said, this information was so good. I'm so glad I came. And you always hope that that happens, but not everybody's in an active conflict. So fast forward 3 weeks, this person came back to a live coaching session and said, okay, this actual conflict has happened. They explain the context. It's someone that they supervise, and it's one of the people that's above them in the organizational hierarchy. So you also had power dynamics. And so it made the conflict challenging. What do I do, Chrysta? I remember this from the session, but I don't know now. And now it's like real life. I have my job on the line. I've got my supervisors involved and my person I supervise. And so the beauty of programs like the ones I run is that I know that training is great to get information, but then you need a space to get troubleshooting, to actually do some problem solving, to get some coaching support. That's the thing that actually lights me up, to actually convert knowledge to action. But we all need that. Like you think about basketball. I don't really follow it, but I know that March Madness, it kind of just ended, right? But you've got people who've been playing basketball forever. They know the mechanics. They know the game. They know the plays in their mind, but they've got to go to the coach, even on the court, to say, what do I do? This is what this other person's doing. How do I move differently in this game so that we can win? And I think that's the thing we often miss when we think of training as the one and only solution to get us to goal.
And I think corporations and organizations are now looking at, if you said you were a coach like 10 years ago, they'd be like,
that's true.
Okay. But I think it's something that is being recognized as you need training and you need support and. But what we're seeing in many different industries are training gets cut first. But when it comes to developing our leaders, like the training is never done. Because I feel like you listed like 15 skills that I need to have as a leader. And I'm looking at that list and seeing my own gaps. And I have a very small team. I'm not running a multi-billion-dollar budget, and I'm not running 500 people. And I feel the pressure of the deficits that I have in my own skills. So what do you say if someone is a leader and they're supposed to have it all together, but they need the support? How do you get that without looking like you're incompetent so that you can support your team?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a couple of things. I love Marvel movies, so I use this metaphor a lot. I think the first is we've got to figure out what our unique leadership superpowers are, because we aren't going to have it all. I mean, I've been trained in a lot of different things over 20 years. There's still things I don't know, Bethany. So when you say you look at yourself, I look at myself too, and I think, oh, there's things I don't know. But both of us and people who are watching this now, you do have a leadership superpower. So it is important to figure out what are the things that you are good at. And I say that because it helps you then figure out what are the areas that you need to grow in. And that's where you can start to build your own personal development plan. Why it's important to know your superpowers, and this is the thing that I'm smiling because I've seen it in action inside of my own membership community. I have members who know what their superpowers are and they know where they struggle. So I've got people who are amazing communicators. That's their leadership superpower. And they're great at building community, great at building positive team culture. And I've got leaders who struggle in that area. And I've seen the cross collaboration for peer learning and peer sharing. So get yourself community where you can share skills with each other. Get yourself into training. When you know the areas where you're not great, maybe at facilitating meetings, creating agendas, making sure that if you've got folks who can't be on screen, they need captioning, they need different participation methods so that they can equitably participate in a space, and you don't know how to do that, get trained on that and then start practicing and building the skill. So get training. And then that training's got to get practice. Those skills have to get practice so that it becomes habit. As opposed to, I went to a great training, I learned some stuff, and now it's locked in a vault in my brain and I never access that learning. It does no one any good, right? So get yourself community, know your superpowers, share it with your peers and learn from them, and then start practicing those skills and start building the habits. I think those are 3 things that I know to be really critical, and I've seen really amazing growth in the members in my programs and even my consulting clients who have followed that plan.
So what would you say if I have a very visible role and I don't necessarily feel safe to say I need help? So is there any advice that you can give me if I'm a leader of an organization and I'm supposed to have it together, but I don't? So is there a way that you can recommend how I can start to broach that conversation so that I can get support without looking incompetent?
Yeah, I would say that even experts need to have their skills fine-tuned. So just last year, I have an amazing C-suite leader. This was their language, not I don't have any of these skills, but I want to sharpen my skills. I want to refine my skills. I want to work under the tutelage of an expert. I want to work with a coach. And that's a just different framing than I'm incompetent or I don't know the skills or I don't have the skill set. And I want to underscore that there's a lot of I think I'm going to use a language limiting belief sometimes too, where we often will say I don't know or I don't have, and then when I work with people, they actually do have some knowledge in the area, they just weren't aware of it. So I say that because I actually don't believe that anyone is incompetent or doesn't know. What I find is that it's a sliding scale. So you or others may not be a level 10, say in emotional intelligence, but you might actually be a 5. And my role as a trainer or a coach is to help you figure out where are you on that sliding scale and how can we get you from a 5 to maybe an 8. You might never be able to be a 10 in something, but we can always move you up the ladder. And when you're pitching to your organization, say, I want to go to, say, this training program or to join a program like mine, the request is never, and it shouldn't be, I don't know any of this stuff, SOS, when it should be, if you want to boost your productivity, if we really are committed to having positive team culture, we should have a practice of always investing in our leaders. And I'm a leader who's saying I'm ready to continue investments in my life learn journey. And this is an opportunity. So I always say, sometimes people say it's spin or marketing, but it really is this idea of committing to lifelong learning. That's how I would frame it. And that's how I would offer for folks who are trying to think about how do I make a request for training without sounding like I don't know things or wanting or coming off as incompetent.
And you know, what you just called out is exactly what it is, my own limiting belief, because what I'm hearing, even if it's on a subconscious level, is my mom's generation of work where you don't bring stuff to work, you don't have problems, you show up, you do the job, you don't ask for help. And that is what I'm bringing that conditioning to my own perception of who I'm supposed to be versus what other people expect from me. So it's interesting that you literally just brought up limiting belief, and it just had a light bulb go off on my head. I was like, it's just the story I'm telling myself that I have to have it all together.
Yeah.
And it's not that might not even necessarily be the case for other leaders that are in organizations that are kind of afraid to go to their HR person or their L&D person or their boss and say, hey, I want to do better at these things. So I love that reframe, because that just basically, you just called out exactly what was probably going on with my fear of I can't ask for help. Like how can you ask for help and you're a supervisor? Like it's this pressure that I'm putting on myself, honestly.
I'll just share a quick story before we wrap up. I mentioned at the top of this conversation that I was promoted as a young director. I hadn't managed one person before. Then I had a team of 35, $4 million budget. I was managing the entire community planning for the county of LA. That's 4,400 square miles. Okay.
Wow.
And my boss, who was the chief executive officer, she said to me, we want to get a coach. Would you like a coach? And at the time, I remember feeling that feeling of being called to the principal's office, like shame and guilt. And so I said in the moment, no, I'm okay. I said no, basically. I didn't need the coach. And it was years later when I did get a coach that I realized I said no because I felt that her offering me a coach was some kind of indictment on my ability to lead, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart enough, that if I had been promoted, then surely I should be able to do all the tasks that I was given. And then I thought, well, maybe she offered me a coach because she thought I couldn't do it. So I just have to work twice as hard. I'll stay later. I'll work harder. I'll ask for support undercover to make my reports extra good. And in retrospect, I'm like, no, she was offering a coach out of generosity because of the commitment to lifelong learning, to help me develop into the leader she saw in me, which is why I got promoted, right? And so I say that, the limiting belief thing I said because it was also part of my own story. And now part of my own mission as a coach and a trainer is that going to training isn't an admission that we're not good enough. Getting a coach isn't an admission that we are a lackluster leader. It is saying, look, Michael Jordan, best basketball player of all time, LeBron James, Lisa Leslie, all have coaches, right? They were consistently trying to get better. Something about us in our corporate jobs or nonprofit government jobs, we feel like we had to enter the job at a LeBron James. I don't know. Well, I do know what that is, but that's a session for another day. What I want to offer is that no, we get to keep developing. We get to ask for coaching and leadership training, and companies have budget for us. Even if, and I'll tell you the true story, even if we've been told, well, we only have $300 for personal development, professional development. I have clients who've made the case, I want to make sure that I am providing top-notch leadership support to my team, and their companies have found $3,000 for them and 2 other people, because the case for strong leadership is undeniable. What it does for reducing turnover, what it does for increasing productivity, and for those in the for-profit sector, it literally increases profits. So it is a moneymaker to have strong leaders, and it's an investment that's worthwhile. We just have to believe it for ourselves.
Right. So this was supposed to be a short conversation, and it turned into like we were just chatting it up. But we got on here because we're going to be together April 23rd, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you tell me what's happening April 23rd? Yeah.
So on April 23rd, we're going to come together. We're going to have another conversation that is on how do we lead organizational culture change. So there's so much happening in our both country and our organizations, but one thing is clear. Many companies have not forgotten their commitments to creating inclusion. And that requires a specific set of skills. It really does. And like I said, you might be amazing at sales, amazing at community outreach, amazing at program design, but none of our training taught us how to lead and cultivate inclusion. So I want to teach you and show you how you can cultivate inclusive leadership skills. And that's going to help you build healthy teams and thriving teams. And so we'll have a conversation about a lot of the things that we didn't get when we got these promotions.
Okay. And when is that? April 23rd? Do you know what time that is?
April 23rd, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern. I don't know what that is, Central or Mountain.
Figure it out. You got coast to coast. If you fall in the middle, figure your middle time out.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm super excited. I think I am the best test dummy for all of these conversations because I have no problem admitting that I'm a hot mess and I don't know what I'm doing. And my team probably should be on here too, because I think it's not only important for leaders to have these skills. These are people skills.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say, I talk about leadership at all levels. So I just had a training with a big client about 3 weeks ago. And I said, leadership is literally the janitor to the receptionist, to a middle manager, to the C-suite. Everybody has the opportunity to lead and the values of the organization. So 100%.
So for those of you who are watching or joining and you're like, I don't have a team, I don't care. It doesn't matter because these skills are transferable to your day-to-day. You lead families, you lead households, you lead pets. I mean, these are all things that they just make us better people and make us, and there's so many things when it comes to inclusivity and belonging that we just have a limited worldview because we do. It's not right, wrong, or indifferent, but my perception is different than Chrysta's, and Chrysta's is different than other people's. But I think there's so many opportunities for us to hone these skills in that I'm excited to learn, because I need it just as much as everybody else, probably more than most people.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yay. Okay, thank you guys for hopping on. April 23rd, we'll make sure to come back and put the link. And then if anybody has questions and you're watching a replay specifically for Chrysta, you don't have any questions for me. I cannot help you. But if you have any questions for Chrysta, make sure you tag her, because LinkedIn Lives do these weird things and they like disappear in LinkedIn land. So if you have questions, tag Chrysta or just DM her directly, so you can get the support that you need, because she's incredible and this is an amazing, and I can't wait to talk to you on the 23rd when we really go deep.
Yeah. All right, everybody, take care.
Bye.